Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 29th, 2022 Wareham Board of Selectmen meeting. May I have a roll call, please, Mr. Tropiano? You're muted, sir.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So 4 selectmen present this evening so far, and Richard Bowen, Town Council.
Thank you, as well as Mr. Sullivan. Oops, there are 5 selectmen present. Thank
Sullivan
you.
jumped in.
Yep, thank you.
Jim Manise has just jumped in.
Yep, thank
All
you.
5 of us are present now, as well as Town Council and the Town Administrator.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Titlebaum to do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Yay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Mr. Slavin. He would like to offer a moment of silence. I'm going to let him explain that.
Good evening, everybody. We have a business member of the community known as Lumpy, which is Bruce Leonard. Lumpy owned the Cape Cod Choppers for probably close to 60 years. He's probably preceded me in the industry by about 3 or 4 years. So I've known Lumpy probably 54, 55 years. Unfortunately, this past Saturday, while coming back from, I think, some type of an event in the morning, probably about 10, 11 o'clock, they were driving in Rochester over by Mary's Pond and Walnut Plain Road. And my understanding is some car ran the light, but I don't have exact details. They were forced off the road and ran right into a tree, real solid, dead center. And they both had to be medevaced, he and his son, to Rhode Island Hospital. And it was kind of sad. Lumpy, from my understanding, is asked the doctors how his son was doing, heard that his son was okay, and proceeded to die. It's a sad event. It's a long time Wareham business person, and we'll all miss him quite a bit. He had a very gruff way of dealing with everybody, but that was his personality. So I'd ask for a moment of silence for Lumpy, and also best wishes for his son, who has neck and collarbone breakage, back breakage, and also leg breakage from the accident. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll go to announcements. Mr. Manise, good evening.
Good evening. Announcements. Well, they'll be having the sock hop over at Salerno's, I believe, next week. I don't have it up and running, and that's to benefit the COA. So take a look at that, and that's it for me. Thank you
very much. Mr. Titlebaum, announcements, sir?
Just that WCTV is going to be hosting a candidates night next Monday night. So they're covering all of the contested races, I believe. So it'll be interesting to hear from the candidates, hear what they have to say. So people participate.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, any other announcements, sir?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I stopped by a few of the restaurants today for dinner, and I try and, when I have a chance, to get something from everybody over the couple weeks' time. It's still difficult. You know, they're just having, you know, supply issues, cost issues, etc. Everybody's having to raise the prices on the menus, which makes it harder for people to go out and eat, etc. But I really would appreciate everybody trying to shop local, but also try and, when they can, at least maybe once a week, if it's possible, go out and get a bite to eat at one of the restaurants or take something home. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Tropiano, any announcements, sir?
Have nothing. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple. I just want to remind people that there are two different and distinct fire and water districts. They each have their own tax rate. The town of Wareham has its own tax rate. The sewer commissioners have their own fee, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts sends out the bills for excise taxes. So if your sewer bill is going up, please don't blame the selectmen. We have nothing to do with it. If your excise tax bill went up, please don't blame the selectmen. We had nothing to do with it. And if your fire and water district bill went up, please don't blame the selectmen. We have nothing to do with that. And I just want to make sure that people understand how many different pockets are being used and collected. And that's it. We'll go to board comments. Mr. Manise.
Yeah, I just want to say that I believe, and if I'm incorrect, please someone correct me, that our inspectional services are the zoning enforcement officers of the town, and that they should be the ones addressing zoning issues for any businesses or individual complaints that are made, and it's not our office that does that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum?
It's not a comment. I actually should have said it during announcements, but you have until April 1st to register your dog. So if you have one of these, go get yourself one of these because the price goes up.
Thank you. Following up on that, I did notice that the Department of Natural Resources is noticing that there are a lot more complaints coming into them about dogs who are not on leash or not under control. I just would add to what Mr. Titlebaum is saying, make sure your dogs are registered. Mr. Slavin, we're in comments, sir.
Okay, just to tag on to Jim's, not to repeat it, but I think we all, most of us get complaints from residents about zoning or, housing issues, etc. And it is the Director of Inspectional Services and the Code Enforcement Officer, which he is, or a delegate, which we actually have a Code Enforcement Officer. All we can do is basically refer the information and forward it through the town administrator to the Inspectional Services Department. We really are not allowed, and I do mean the word allowed, to get involved directly with these issues. People assume that as selectmen, we have all conquering powers, whatever you want to call it. But the bottom line is we are restricted in a lot of areas of what we can and can't do. And Mr. Sullivan reminds us frequently. You can
Thank
smile,
you.
Derek. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one other thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's my dry sense of humor today. VFW had the Vietnam brunch basically this past Sunday. We had actually Congressman Keating there, Senator Pacheco, Representative Gifford, and it was a very nice event. And I was able to lobby again for our controlled gate crossing for Merchants Way with Senator Pacheco, with the congressman. I was asking again for a smallest amount of money, which is $142 million for the water pollution control project, and a few other things. It was very nice. What bothers me mostly, though, is every year the attendance gets less and less. I think people forget what the veterans are and what they do. We get to do a lot of things in life because of what the veterans basically provided for us. They've protected the country. They've done all kinds of stuff, and some of them have unfortunately give up their lives. And it's not just good enough to say thank you for your service. They deserve a lot more than that. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe today is Vietnam Veterans Remembrance Day.
It is.
It is. So
Yes.
I would echo what Mr. Slavin has said. I'm old enough to be of the generation where many of my relatives and friends served in Vietnam. So it was not pretty at all.
Was not.
Mr. Tropiano.
Okay, so I want to talk about the upcoming election since Peter brought it up. So the date is past the 15th to turn in papers, so papers should be in and everybody should be lined up to run for selectmen. I want to try to impress on everybody how important it is that they pay attention, look at the people that are running, pay attention and get the people that they want to run the community. There are people in the that are running. One of them I happen to know is one that was here that nearly bankrupted the town. I think you should pay attention to that. There are others candidates that are good quality candidates out there. I think you should look at them carefully and pick the right candidate. I think that's an important thing. Now, not that, you know, Peter and I were the best candidates in the world to be here, but I think we did a pretty good job. I think this board overall, as a board, we've done a terrific job. We've had a great town administrator. We have some great help. I've enjoyed this so much. You have no idea. It's going to be funny not having it, and I'll probably miss it a little bit, but you know, it's just time kind of moves on. And I wanted to make this point because a lot of people out there seem to think that we were going to jump back into the race at the last minute. I don't know how they could possibly think that that would happen. You know, and why, what would be the motivation for that? I don't know, but it's obvious now the 15th was the date when you had to have papers in, they're gone. None of us can jump back into the race, that includes Peter or myself. And, you know, this is just poor thinking. And listen, pay attention, go to listen to the debates, find out who these people are, pay attention, because, you know, everybody's complaining right now about all the things that are going on in town, in government in general, and all these people that are gotten into power in various odd places, which, by the way, can be problematic. And now they're saying, geez, how did they get there? What's going on here? Well, that's because you've all been asleep at the switch. You haven't paid any attention. You haven't looked at the people that you've allowed to get elected. And this is not a good thing. You need to make sure you pay attention. Remember, everything starts locally. And this community is where you live, and we affect you more than the state or federal government does, because we affect you immediately. So pay attention, pick the people that you think would make a good job based on what you know about them. Learn something, find out. This is very important. I've enjoyed working with every single one of you folks. I want you to know there's been some great debates along the way, which are always good. And I just want each one of you to know, every single one of you, that I know that I've enjoyed this to no end. I feel like I've done some good things here. I've probably done some things that weren't so good, but hopefully those were the smaller amounts. And thank you so much for having me, all of you, having me and allowing me to participate. And I want to thank the town more than anything else, because you know, I ran for a specific reason, and that was because the town helped me when I was down and out with my family, and I figured I owed it to everybody to put some time into this. That's why I did it, and I never made a decision based on politics or anything else. I've always made my decisions based on what I thought was best for the town, and I hope everybody realized that. And thank you so much. And now that that's over, I wanted everybody to know this. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
I know you're going to see people who are on the golf committee. We cannot get Mr. Hassenfuss into the meeting, according to Mr. White. So, Mr. Hassenfuss, you have a couple of choices. You cannot go away, but you could call me on my telephone. And Mr. Gibberti, you could give him my phone number, and I will have him attend that way, because he is one of our candidates for our golf committee. So, Mr. Gibberti, I know you're there. If you could let Mr. Hassenfuss know that we've tried 6 times, we being WCTV, to get him into the meeting, and we can't. So he'll have to call in if that's okay. Thank you. Have I done everybody on the board comments? Oh, there you are, Peter. Yay. Excellent.
I think Peter wants to say something. I saw his hand get raised.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I'll pass. Thanks.
No, go ahead, Peter.
Well, I just wanted to just remind Patrick that we did change the charter, so the election is actually in May, so this isn't our swan song tonight. In case that was what he was thinking, I thought he might save such an eloquent and impassioned speech for that night, but
No, I just wanted, since that we weren't allowed, since we couldn't jump into the race anymore, that the race is pretty well set. I wanted
Yeah.
everybody, just wanted to give a sort of a little kickoff to everybody. And, I don't like to do this the last night and all that, so I just want to get out of the way.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Tropiano, we have some appointments, reappointments, and interviews, and we have the 3 gentlemen who are the other 3 applicants for the Golf Course
Right, we-
Advisory Committee.
Mr. Barrett, the Hassenfuss, and Mr. Labonte, Mr. Gilberti, is he here? He's supposed to be here, right?
He doesn't have to be here. He can come in if he wants, but we interviewed him last week. Mr. Hannon and Mr. Gilberti were interviewed last week, and they're on here to be voted in, not to be interviewed a second time.
Well, Mr. Hassenfuss is up here, and Mr.
Yes.
Labonte here, and Mr. Barrett are here, so.
Okay,
You
let's
can ask
start
questions.
with Mr. Barrett.
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Barrett, could you introduce yourself to those people who obviously haven't been paying attention for the past 25 years that you've dedicated to the town? And tell us why you'd like to serve on this committee.
Hi, good evening. As you said, I'm George Barrett, lifelong resident of Wareham and interested in making sure that this transitioned into a municipal golf course is successful and would like to help. I
Thank
think
you.
most of you know I've done my time on the planning board and the rep to CPC. I'm the chairman of the Prudential Committee of the Fire District. And I'm also on the board of directors of the Wonkinko Rod and Gun Club, which, a few years back, we negotiated a conservation restriction with the Coalition for Buzzards Bay and partnering with Mass Wildlife. And that went quite well for all involved. And I think I could be of some help to this committee.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the gentlemen if they have any questions. Mr. Slavin, any questions of Mr. Barrett?
No, I know Mr. Barrett very well, and he'll serve us very well.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum, any questions of Mr. Barrett?
nope, he's a well-known quantity.
Thank you. Mr. Manise, any questions of Mr. Barrett?
Oh, same thing. We know who he is and what he does, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tropiano, any questions of Mr.
Oh,
Barrett?
I know Mr. Barrett very well. And I
Okay.
really don't ask him any questions.
Okay, thank you. I have
don't
no
know if that's a
questions.
good or a bad thing.
Well, yeah. All right, we're going to ask you to stay in the meeting, Mr. Barrett, and we'll go on to Mr. Hassenfuss.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
He's got to unmute.
Peter, you're muted and you're invisible. Now, Mr. Hassenfuss is a retired middle school teacher, so he should be techie, Mr. Hassenfuss. I'm not picking on you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, sir.
Okay.
Can you introduce yourself to us?
Sure. I'm Peter Hasenfuss. I spent 35 years teaching school at the middle school, started out at the high school and ended up teaching 6th grade in the middle school. I brought my kids up playing golf at Little Harbor. We would play probably 4 days a week. The days I wouldn't play would be the days where they had the ladies' day, and then they would have the Elks playing early. So my kids cut their teeth on golf playing down there, and they all still play now, and they're in their 40s, all 3 of them. So I am lucky to be asked to join this committee, and I'm really hoping that we can keep this open space the way it is right now.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, any questions of Mr. Hassenfuss?
Again, I know Peter very well. He hangs out at the Narrows Restaurant every morning when they're open, and we actually have what we call a little town hall.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum, any questions, sir?
No, no questions. Thanks for volunteering.
Thank you. Mr. Manise, any questions, sir?
I can't say that I know him, just thank you for applying. And sounds like you know the golf course pretty well. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Tropiano, any questions, sir?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Pete, I have no questions of you either. His oldest daughter is my daughter's age, so I've known Peter a very long time. So Peter, if you would just hang around in the meeting. And
Absolutely.
thank you. We will continue with Mr. Labonte. Good evening, Brett, and I believe I had your son as a student in 10th grade.
I hope you don't hold that against me.
No, I do not. He's a lovely kid. He's not a kid anymore. So why don't you introduce yourself to us and let us know what your interest is?
My name is Brett Labonte. I've been a member. I moved down here in '89. I've been a member at Little Harbor Golf Course. It's become part of my family. And my big thing is, like everybody else, to keep it a golf course. I started, my first job was at 9 years old at Whaling City Golf Course in New Bedford. From the time I was 9 till I was in my 20s, I did every job, cutting greens, doing, even cooking breakfast. And at that point, Stanley Brown was the owner, but he leased it from New Bedford, from the city. And so I worked for him. I worked for Jeff Lopes, who was the next owner. So I've had some experience with people leasing from a town or from a city. So I know a little bit of the ins and outs. I've also dealt with I've seen some management companies come into some golf courses and it wasn't the greatest, so you really have to be very specific on who you pick, because there are some companies out there that can just come in and bleed a place. And I know a lot of the golfers, and it's very important to a lot of people to keep this a golf course, as you people know, with the vote that went against the Audubon Society. So I just like to be part of it, and just to keep this, I know there's going to be change, but at least keep it a golf course. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, any questions of Mr. Labonte? You're muted, sir.
I had a phone ringing in the background, so I muted myself. No, I actually saw Brett a few hours ago at the restaurant, reminded him he had to show up today. It's all good.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Excuse me, Mr. Titlebaum.
No questions. Thanks for stepping up.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you've got the time to get away and do this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Manise, any questions of the young man?
No, thanks. You have a great background. A couple of you who've applied worked with the golf course. I think that brings a lot. And it's amazing how Alan knows everybody and I know no one. It's just, I'm amazed.
To the narrow.
You need to hang out with me, Jim, that's all.
Mr. Tropiano, do you have any questions of Mr. Labonte?
Mr. Labonte for jumping up.
Thank you. And I have no questions of you, sir, either. So I would entertain a motion, which would be to whatever, if you so choose, would be to appoint all 5 of the names that are in front of you, which would be George Barrett, Peter Hassenfuss, Brett Labonte, Thomas Hannon, and James Gibberti. We heard from the last 2 last week. Their terms would expire December 31st, 2022.
Approve the 5 individuals to term to expire December 31st, 2022.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Tropiano and seconded by Mr. Slavin. Are there any further comments or questions? I will go for a roll call vote, please. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yeah,
myself, yes, 500. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Your appointment papers are available in the Selectmen's office on the third floor of Town Hall. You need to pick them up and then get sworn in the clerk's office. And once you have done that, I will convene a meeting so that we can set you up and get you going. And thank you very much for volunteering, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And good night. Thank you. Mr. Tropiano?
next up is the common vicular all alcoholic license renewal, basically for certain individuals. So far, the only ones that are complete for everybody's edification are the Cohog Republic, the Little Harbor Country Club, Americana Cafe, and the Waterways. Those are the ones that are complete out of the list that we have. So I move that we approve those individuals. Those
Second.
Okay.
Okay, well, first of all, the first three names you read are common vics. The second name, fourth name you read is a public amusement license. So you need to make two different motions.
Oh,
Sir.
yeah.
All right, so I'll remove the Waterways and say
Yep.
Cohog Harbor Country Club,
Yep.
Americana Cafe.
Thank you. Is there a
Second.
second to that motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on those three applications?
Just a question for clarification.
Yes, sir.
These are for seasonal,
Yes, sir.
all alcohol common vic licenses.
Yes, sir.
What's the time frame those run to and from?
I believe it's April
So-
1st
Okay.
through,
To January, they go through January 1st.
yeah,
And they can
Right.
apply for a 6-week extension as well.
Correct.
Right,
So-
right.
Theoretically, they can push their downtime off
right.
to just half of February and March.
Right, I thought it was April 1st through November or whatever, then you can have a 6-week extension if the town so does it. I just was wondering because we're just seeing these today, and I thank Mr. Tropiano for putting out that only 4 were complete. If the issue with the completeness is with the town, I can understand, when we discuss about others after this possibly. But if it's with the applicant, it's piling up, and when you see all these coming, I have an issue with that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there's no further discussion, I'm going to go for a roll call vote on the 3 that Mr. Tropiano motioned to approve. Mr. Slavin,
Yes, just one note also
Sure.
that Jim made. Some of these ones that have come before us on this list here, unfortunately, aren't available a lot of the time. Either some of them may be closed now or have very limited hours. So if they have to have inspections or anything else done, it gets very difficult because they're not around. So I just want to make the point that the yacht club, obviously, stashes, they're locked up tight and still are.
Early this year, last year.
Cape Cod lobster rolls, again, that's hit and miss. It's usually just a couple days a week. And I think there was one other one. I'm not sure about Scarlet. I think Scarlet Rose is another issue as well. I think they're brand new and it's not done yet. And Stay on the Cafe. So just so we know that they're simply not available for the different inspections that are required, from the town. So they have to somehow work it out.
okay,
And it was yes.
okay. Thank you.
Sorry,
Mr.
convoluted answer.
That's okay. Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes,
myself, yes. So those 4 are approved. Oh, excuse me, those 3 are approved with no hangups, if you will.
Right.
Some of the hangups, as Mr. Slavin has noted, as Mr. Manise has noted, are from the applicant's point of view. And some of them are actually from either one of the fire departments or possibly the town. So we do not release these licenses if we make a motion and approve the motion to grant them. They are granted subject to receiving all of the paperwork. And all of you gentlemen have the paperwork that is needed noted on each one of the applications in your packet. Mr. Tropiano, I'll accept a motion.
Okay, I move we approve the remaining licenses with the stipulation that they be held until all the requirements are satisfied.
Thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion made and seconded by Mr. Tropiano and Mr. Titlebaum that the licenses be granted subject to receiving all of the missing documentation. Is there any further discussion on that motion?
I think Mr. Manise had his hand up.
Yeah, I
Go
just want to reiterate that, you know, these packages, this is 2 days before they need the license. And everything should be completed. If it's on the side of the town or a town department or district, I understand it, but if it has to do with payment and lack of processing paperwork, this is 2 days before. It's just not good for us to do it this way. So that's all I need to say. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Any further comments on that? I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise.
Reluctant, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
and myself, yes, 500 for those. And then you need
Next, I
two
move.
motions for the other ones.
Yep, I remember, next time, I move we approve the renewal of the public amusement licenses under the provisions of chapter 140 Massachusetts General Law. And the only one that is completed is Waterways. So I move that we approve that one outright.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion to approve? No. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Slavin,
Yes, and it's good to see that they'll be open on time this year.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Is it
Yes.
ever?
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
myself, yes, 500. That is approved.
And the next, I move that we approve Cartland of Cape Cod and Sand and Surfs Mini Golf as before, with the stipulation that all the required documentation is in before the licenses are released.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on those two licenses? Roll call vote, please. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
and myself, yes, 500. Thank you very much.
Next,
Uh,
discuss possible
Mrs.
vote.
Whiteside,
I'm sorry, yes, Mr. Slavin.
just to back up, Jim, it is extremely difficult, for the applicant and the town people to get this done. We need to, again, we've talked about it before, getting these things out at an earlier date to make sure it's on time, because again, in 2 days from now, whatever, technically they can't function if they're actually going to be open.
Well, I
That's-
believe sent out in October, just so you know.
Oh, I know, but I'm just, it's really hard when,
Sure.
the information doesn't come so late in the season for them, that's all. It's a
you.
two-way street.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible vote regarding the right of first refusal to purchase land noted on 61A partial land conversion off Charge Pond Road, map 115, lot 1002 and 1008.
We all got a letter, or I sent a letter to Mr. Buckland, to the Director of Assessor, to the Town Planner, to the Wareham Redevelopment Authority, to the Community Preservation Committee, as well as the Open Space Committee, and asked them for their recommendations. And you have those in your packet. The Open Space voted 302 not to recommend the purchase, in other words, pass on the right of first refusal. Community Preservation, in a unanimous vote, voted to decline exercising the right of first refusal. I said Open Space already. Mr. Buckland, Planning Board, voted 500 to release to proceed as requested, in other words, to pass. And Conservation Commission, did I read that one yet? Conservation Commission voted 600 that the town not pursue the purchase.
I move we,
And the assessor,
Well, Mr. Before you make a motion,
yep,
I would ask
yep,
information. So,
yes, yep, go ahead.
no, if you go through and then please allow me some time.
I'm sorry.
I said, go through and finish what you were saying, but I heard a motion being made and I wanted to make sure before
Yeah,
we got
okay.
there.
So it's a parcel of a couple of acres of land, I believe, or Mr. Sullivan, do you want to address it, sir?
Yeah, I think I would like we have two options here. Well, there's really three. I'd like to get together with them. I believe that at the planning board, something was mentioned to them about the easements going across town property that bifurcates a very large parcel of ours. We tried to do that during Blue Wave, and we're told that I believe that it was this this entity that had an issue with it. So I would recommend that you either hold off, or if we have to do it at this time, you make the motion to basically take our rights, because that is a very good access point for municipal maintenance facility. I think there's different ways for them to access it. I don't think we need to go with our rights, if you will, to purchase the property. However, before you release this, I think there's something work that needs to be done.
Thank you. We do have a 30-day from notification, and I sent this out on February 16th, so I believe we're at the 30 days.
I thought you had 120 days.
Yeah, I thought it was like 90 or 120.
Oh, let me look.
We don't do it before 30 days, but it
Oh,
can be
yeah,
a longer
okay.
period.
The
Okay,
30, just for clarification, the 30 days, the policy of the selectmen have on this, I believe it's 120 days for the actual Mass General Law part of it.
okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Bowen, could you weigh in
Yeah.
on this, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. State law is 120 days. Your policy reference is 30, but your policy is not binding on you or anyone. Thank you.
So, Mr. Sullivan, you would recommend that we hold off on it?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's the best action to take right now. So again, maybe Mr. Menard and the entity together to start talking about how maybe we can work together to resolve this. Again, if you go past municipal maintenance on the right, you'll see that
Mhm.
large, dirt road, if you will, with the block off of there, the gate. And that actually, the property beyond that, another 13 acres is town property. And by having that easement through the middle, it actually impacts our property. So I believe on the side where I believe is it Surecran, or but they'd be able to put in another access point that way and go behind our property, or even the back edge or something. I'd love to work with them on it and
Okay.
try to get this done.
All right, then I think, and I just run this by Mr. Bowen, I think it would be appropriate for us to table it to a time specific, maybe a month or something like that, or 45 days or something like that. But I think that we should also authorize you and whoever you designate to work on the issue that you're asking us to hold on because of. That was a sentence that ended with a preposition, but I'm never going to redesign it.
What-
Mr. Bowen, would that be appropriate?
I'm sorry. I'm sure it's my shortcoming. I don't understand what I'm being asked to do.
I'm thinking that we would table this for 45 days, but that we would also take a vote to authorize Mr. Sullivan to negotiate on behalf of the town to get the easements that he's talking about.
Oh, I see. I understand now. If that's your desire, you could do that as long as you're within the 120-day window, at which time the clock expires for you.
So I think if we went 45 days, gentlemen, that would, does that give you enough time, Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, we can work on it and give a response to the Board of Selectmen as to whether we've had a favorable reception or not.
Okay, thank you.
So
Mr. Manise, do you have a question, sir?
yeah, I have a question and a statement. So as this has to do with real estate transactions and whatnot, maybe it would be better off discussing things like this in executive session and legal ramifications and whatnot, and get some clarifications. And additionally, our town policy for the notification states shall be referred to Community Preservation Committee, Open Space Committee, and the Wareham Land Trust for recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. They would have 30 days to get back to the board once they're notified. I don't know if the Wareham Land Trust had been notified of the.
They were not.
Okay, so I'm just reading this from the town policy statement number 02-7, which amazingly, Selectman Tropiano was a signature on that back in 2002.
Wow. Okay, well, we can certainly notify the Wareham Land Trust. We
Yes,
did
sir.
notify the planner, the director of assessing, the Wareham Redevelopment Authority, Community Preservation,
I understand.
and Open Space.
I'm just stating what our policy statement.
Okay.
stated.
Gentlemen, what's your pleasure?
Let's delay it for 45 days.
Is that a motion?
So made.
Are you going to include to authorize Mr. Sullivan?
If Mr. Sullivan is willing to do it, I will add that to my motion.
To negotiate the issue of,
To negotiate to the point after 45 days, we then make a decision how we want to move forward.
thank you. And
Ask a question. Does anybody know what the proposed use is?
Go ahead.
yes, the blah, blah, notification from Shore Cran for the taking of 1.25 acres of land from Mass General Law 61A agricultural use to commercial solar energy development, with the balance of the property remaining horticultural use as a working cranberry farm.
Okay,
Blah, blah. So it's a very small portion of the land to go to solar.
And Madam Chair, just for a clarification,
Mhm.
if we get information sooner, we'll obviously bring it to the board, so it
Yes,
doesn't
sir.
have to wait the 45 days.
Yes, sir, thank you. So the motion is to table it for up to 45 days and to authorize Mr. Sullivan to negotiate on behalf of the town. And I guess that following Mr. Manise's suggestion, it would go into an executive session when he comes back with a report. But I don't think that should be part of the motion, Mr. Slavin.
Correct.
So
Second.
there's a motion and a second from Mr. Titlebaum. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I just, go ahead, whomever was.
No, go ahead.
I was just, again, as we're talking a couple of different things. One, the right of first refusal, and two, a possible relocation of a right of way to something that is more appropriate or advantageous to the town, which would still allow access to the landowners, multiple landowners' properties. We should be a little more informed on this, and I'm sure town council will, and Mr. Sullivan will take the time to do that. That's all I wanted to say on that.
Okay, thank you. We do have a copy of the letter from Shore Cran. You also have a map that outlines where the information that I think you're looking for. We have a motion and a second. I will go for a roll call vote, please. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes,
and myself, yes, 500. Thank you very much. So it'll be postponed for 45 days, sir.
right. The next two will be with Mr. Buckland. Discussion of possible vote for signage at the Wareham Industrial Park to be located on Kendrick Road. We talked about this last week.
Yes, Mr. Buckland, would you introduce yourself? Last week, we had sort of a general request, which we referred back to you for more specifics, and you actually came up with a design. Would you care to address that, sir?
Yes, I would. Ken Buckland, Director of Planning and Community Development, and I have some slides to organize my thoughts and show you what I have as a concept.
Thank you.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. The problem is that what's happening, the businesses in the Wareham Industrial Park on Kendrick Road, which is across the street from Wareham Crossing, includes a lot of customer-oriented businesses now, retail outlets, service businesses, and they need directional signs that lead customers to the businesses and their locations. But without a standard for the design of and the placement of the signs, what we have is individual signage creating confusion and getting a little messy around the entrance. On the, as you probably see, the sandwich board signs and the wire signs that are put out on the along the state highway. To address that, what I was wanting you to consider was that there are three types of signage, three types of signs that I think are key to the discussion. One is the on-premise sign, the ones that the businesses choose to locate to identify their business site. The off-premise or directional signs that they're looking for to get to lead the customers or the delivery vehicles to their location. And then the entrance sign that identifies the park, and which is at this time rather aged and not well aged at that, on the at the corner of Recovery Road and Kendrick. The on-premise signs are, let's go through them. They're the decision of the individual business. We have the zoning bylaws in place to control their design, how big and where they're located, and how many signs there are on the property. The off-premise directional signs are the ones I think we want to discuss a little bit more. These are what I'm proposing is that they be in a consistent format, so that we have a design or a branding standard, and there's clear information that can be gathered from the signs. One example I suggested we look at is that the Vermont Transportation Agency, rather than billboards, what they have is signs along the state highways that identify the businesses, and the puts on the logo and shows the distance off the highway that those businesses are down the adjacent roads, the intersecting roads that are there. So I think this is a good idea for design standards, where we allow that for a business logo, a business name, and a block for a directional arrow to be on essentially on ladder signs. They can be located in the Kendrick Road right away or the Thatcher Road right away. So they must be approved by the Board of Selectmen as signs in the town accepted road right of way. One location we could be at the entrance of the industrial park at the lights, but this would need state approval since that's state land out there.
Yeah.
They'd be paid for by the businesses that want the information to be to identify them and their location. the size of them would be in accordance with the speed of travel that people going by there on the, as an example, on the state highways. In Vermont, they're 2 feet high by some 6 feet long or so. But you don't need that big a sign when you're going on the Cranberry Highway. An estimated cost for each erected sign, I would say $250. So I'm saying that this would be something that the businesses pay for to identify their locations. I'm thinking a traditional sign, or maybe something more advanced as the park sign. This is something that we're looking right now for the tenants and the owners to pay for, where they would get together and help improve the existing sign that's at the industrial park. So that's the signage recommendations I have. Obviously, this takes a little bit more thought on the design, so we get down to the details of the sign format. But I think we need a new entrance sign, and the businesses need some directional signs, and to keep it clean and have a quality brand. I think we have a standard format for the directional signs. So that's my proposal.
Thank you. Mr. Manise, I'll let you have a first shot at this one. Any
Um,
questions, sir?
I think the Wareham Industrial Park sign, I believe you're indicating that would be at the entrance of Route 28 in Kendrick Road.
No, I'm thinking it stays at its existing location at the corner of Recovery Road and Kendrick, which is town property and
Right,
not state
right.
property. And you can see the sign through the
Through the woods?
now that we cleared out the understory.
Yeah, I guess if it was had the right colors and whatnot, it would. So that's just that's one thing I think is important, so that wherever the business is in there, that who's ever coming here and not using the GPS can identify the industrial park from the main thoroughfare. And then from there, the directional signs, ladder board signs, this is just my thought, for Kendrick Road or what was the other one, Thatcher?
Thatcher, yeah.
Having the signs for the particular businesses. When you talk about the highways, as you said, you have to get state permission, and if they want to utilize some of the opportunities that are available for, I don't know, federal, but for state highways, which would be 495, would be 25, but not 495, or can you do both? Can they sponsor a section, or can we put up Wareham Industrial Park, exit 1/2 mile? Just get them there, let them see that this is where the park is, and once they enter into it, then the ladder boards. But I think the concepts are great. I'm with it. It's just, my 2 cents for what that's worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manise. Mr. Slavin?
I really have nothing more to add than what Ken put out and what also Jim put out. The end result will be what we need.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum?
I mean, it's interesting. The one thing that is sort of the elephant in the room is we didn't talk about the former state property that was abandoned back to us that seems to be being utilized by a third party as a possible location for the sign, but I mean, the main entrance sign, but something to think about going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Tropiano?
I think it's a great idea. Obviously, we talked about it last week, and I think we need to keep moving forward and come up with this solution, whatever it's going to be. I don't think we're ready for it right now tonight, but I think a little more work on this and it could work. And I think Peter's absolutely right. It's about time that we deal with that issue that's been a cancer over there for quite some time.
Thank you. Mr. Buckland, I want to thank you very much for the presentation. You've given us some great visuals to think about. I agree with the gentleman here that we should proceed. It's important for everyone to know what businesses we have located in our industrial park, and we will be hosting a new one pretty soon, I guess. And that's important that we show support for the businesses who choose to do business here in Wareham. I think that's very important. What would your next step be, sir, Mr. Buckland?
I think it's to have a discussion with the tenants and the owners in the industrial park about their level of participation in this and what they see as the solutions to their needs as well.
Okay, great. Do you need any authorization from us, or do you just want to keep right on going where you've been going?
I think keep rolling along. As long as I have your back, you have mine.
I believe that you've heard from the gentleman and myself that we all think that it's a great idea. Okay, great. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
The next item is also your presentation, Mr. Buckland, I believe. The MBTA.
Yeah, now for something completely different.
Yep, totally different. MBTA communities.
MBTA Communities Program, which is a housing program where the state's trying to promote transit-oriented development. What they've done is they've asked a change in the land use laws, Chapter 40A, a new Section 3A, which requires for communities with MBTA service or adjacent to MBTA service that they have to follow through on some multifamily housing program. And I'll get to that. Just wanted to point out that Wareham is classified as an MBTA adjacent community, not necessarily an MBTA community, because we don't have a train stop. Although we have a platform, we don't have a transit stop dedicated at this time for commuting from Wareham. So but we still have, as an MBTA adjacent community, requirements in the new guidelines that we must have zoning that allows multifamily housing as of right. That is, without a special permit or variance or just an issuance of maybe a site plan review and a building permit. And it must be of a density of at least 15 units per acre, which is typical of townhouse density, if you're familiar with the townhouses that you see around. It also has to be within a half mile of a transit station. No age restrictions. You can't make it just for elderly. And it's got to be suitable for families with children. They look for build out as the numbers equal to 10% of the existing housing. They calculated Wareham as needing a capacity for 1,297 multifamily units. That's based on what they say is 12,967 units, housing units in the 2020 census for Wareham. Now, this is 3,000 more units than the 9,887 that or 78 that the subsidized housing inventory lists our housing within the community for the purposes of the 10% of affordable housing. Somehow they jumped it up 3,000 units from that to require us to have the capacity for almost 1,300 multifamily units, housing units in our zoning. One of the things I wanted to point out in our zoning is that we do have something that starts to work for that capacity. You'll see the CG zoning district here that extends to the intersection with 190, 195. It includes the Rosebrook Place and the housing, the apartments that are there. You'll notice, well, that kind of housing can be built anywhere within the CG zoning district.
So,
Mr.
Uh,
Buckland, if you think that you have a
thank you.
PowerPoint up, you don't. We're still looking at the signed one.
Well, let me get that up then.
Okay, thank you.
You see it now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I want to point out that the CG zoning district here within the center part of the town is the zoning district of interest to us in meeting compliance with this program. Interestingly enough, the CG zoning district allows multifamily buildings with being 5 or more units allowed as of right, and that's in the zoning bylaws. The density is calculated at 5,000 square feet for the first unit and 1,000 square feet for each additional unit, which is equivalent to 39 units per acre. This is significantly more than the 15 units per acre required by the guidelines, the MBTA housing program. There are no age restrictions in the district. It's within a half mile of the downtown T platform. And initial calculations that were done by my office show that we have a capacity for 2,000 housing units there, even with the cranberry bogs and the wetlands that exist in that zoning district. So it looks like we're covered by that. We'd have to follow this with a more detailed analysis of the developable land area and the number of units, but I think we can show that we meet the capacity for the 1,300 units that they're looking for within the district. So I think we're covered in this regard. There is a public comment period on the program guidelines. It ends this Thursday. If you want to have comments on there, we need to get them in. There's a community information form that has to be submitted by May 2nd. I submitted a draft form already with the information on that presented here on the zoning district that allows multifamily as of right. We also need to hold a public meeting, and I'm hoping that we can use this meeting as the identified public meeting required by the program.
Questions, Mr. Slavin, sir?
I brought this to everybody's attention probably over a month ago and sent the information to Ken. This is probably going to change. There's a lot of kickback from a lot of communities, a lot of municipalities on this. What we don't have included in this is where did we come up with a water, sewer, et cetera, for 1,000 units or whatever it is? We don't have capacity for any of that right now. And that's also part of the project when you sit there and going to put housing in. What happens when we become what we call an MBTA commuter rail community, when we get commuter rail in 2 years, which most likely will happen? It changes some of the rules and regulations. So what's happening is through the MMA and other organizations, we're all submitting complaints, et cetera, about all the different ramifications of what this particular rule is. I think we're going to see some changes come down the line, but the bottom line is Ken is correct. You have to submit that information form on May 2nd. I believe it's 5 p.m. It's got to be in by, and we'll see what happens. But there's a bunch of different state and other organizations that are fighting this because it's not feasible. You know, that someone pulled this off to try and meet housing requirements at the governance level that they want to get down. They're forcing it. And it's a real problem. You know, again, you know, if you don't do it, it's not a problem, you know, but then you don't get grants, et cetera. So And I'm not sure even what Ken has put together, whether they'll accept what we show is for 1,000 units or more. So I cross my fingers that this gets pushed out and doesn't get enacted and gets redeveloped. But the bottom line is that it's not possible. We can't possibly meet the requirements because we can't provide the services for the units. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manise?
I attended the webinar on this, and it was interesting and eye-opening. I don't think we have to cram them all in one place. I don't know if I didn't understand it that it had to be a build out, but it just had to be a zoning district or districts that you would allow the density of the minimal of what they're requiring. Am I incorrect on that, Mr. Buckland, or?
Or Jim, if, Mr. Selectman, Town Council here, if I could just jump in. And Ken, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that the requirement is that we have 50 acres zoned in such a manner that it could accept that scale of development, not that we actually have to build it out.
Correct.
That's correct.
And that it's considered to be future planning for future development rather than mandating development as of, date A, B, C, or X or Y.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Bowen and Mr. Buckland. Mr. Manise?
Also, you had that half-mile issue as well.
And
Mr.
you can split the districts also. So, and another question I have, a question that I have, of the grants that would be eligible for, how many have we utilized? What are there, 3 separate grants that would be considered eligible for? Have we utilized in the last couple of years?
One is the Mass Works grant application that is for infrastructure, and we've applied for that, but we haven't received any in the last couple of years.
And that- Go ahead.
And DHCD has a discretionary action that they can take against any other application as well.
And last question or comment. All multifamily housing within these designated areas that previously exist counts towards the quota, which would be 1,297 units?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum?
Well, I guess we'll see how it plays out.
Okay.
That's all
Mr.
I have.
Tropiano? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Peter.
No, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tropiano?
I don't know if anybody saw the paper Sunday there, but the big headline was 40B's a bust. And it has been since they implemented it. It was a bust when it was called 766 housing. And this business of forcing people and communities to build houses or set aside stuff is very unreasonable and very unfair, and a lot of the towns are complaining. Of course, we've complained immense because of our issue with being in the New Bedford section as opposed to being in Boston, as opposed to New Bedford, and making us in the price of our property, making us a prime candidate for this. So another problem like this, another issue like this, where we set aside. You can bet your bottom dollar that in this town it'll get used, and I don't see how we can afford it. I don't see how we ever in this whole world be able to put 2,000 more units in this town of children housing. Think about that. You can't restrict it, so it would be available for children and so on and so forth. I don't know where we'd get the money for that. It's just, this is a joke. I mean, the state just continues to force this stuff on it, but I don't see Weston or Wellesley or Sherburne or Newton or any of the other communities over there where the property values are so high that you couldn't possibly build a unit. It's just not reasonable. It's not fair. So they put all this burden on our communities, and at some point we're going to have to turn around and sue them as a group of communities, we're gonna have to turn around and sue them, get this in court, and figure out how we're going to stop them from doing this kind of stuff, because it's, you know, you're just not gonna be able to afford it now. You know, like I say, I'm leaving, but you guys are gonna be stuck with this. And I really, you know, my heart goes out to the people who have to deal with this, and good luck.
Thank you. I agree with you, gentlemen. I think it's unreasonable, unfeasible, and unfair. Do you need a letter from the selectman's office indicating that you did have this informational meeting at this time, or can you just include that?
I can just include it in the, on the form. I don't
Okay.
need a letter.
Okay.
designated. We have the agenda that's listed as well, so we're covered.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't have any other questions or comments. Mr. Manise, do you?
If I might, you know, during that webinar, I specifically asked the question, what happens if we don't, you know, create these zoning areas? They said, you know, ineligible for these grants then.
Yeah.
Boom, period.
Yeah. Madam
Yes, sir.
Chairman,
Mr. Bowen.
just, I know there are towns that simply do not apply for these grants. For example, the town of Marshfield comes to mind. They have not applied for, nor have they received grant money under those three programs. So they likely just wouldn't go ahead, or it's my understanding they won't go ahead and adopt any of this zoning. So really, I suppose on one level, it comes down to a cost benefits analysis, you know, as to whether you want the grant money or need it or have been getting it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're all set on this topic unless you have any other questions or comments for Mr. Buckland. Yes, Mr. Slavin.
There's 175 MBTA communities. I can guarantee you there'll be 175 communities that are going to be writing negative letters on this.
Good. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr. Buckland. I think we have enjoyed your company this evening, unless you have any further comments or questions of us.
Do you want to put together a letter for the March 31st, the Thursday comment period on this?
Yes. So I will accept a motion from one of my members as to what the tone of that letter would be.
Hostile.
Yeah, good. Let's try a motion there.
Okay. I move the board authorize the chairman to send a letter hostile to the intent of this legislation to the appropriate parties.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and second.
Go ahead.
What?
I understand his intent, but.
Yeah, I
no,
know.
Yeah, so I'm good with it.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion to authorize me to write a nasty letter?
Well, not nasty.
Okay. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
myself, yes. So I will work with Mr. Buckland, if that's okay with you gentlemen, to get the letter done before Thursday.
Just one thing, Madam
sir.
Chairman, you were going to let Mr. Buckland go, but he may want to speak to some of the articles that are coming up for the special warrant.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay, Mr. Buckland. Do you choose to stay? I know that you have a couple that you are submitting to be included in the special. If you'd like to stay around, that's fine.
I'll stay around at your discretion.
We'll just leave you in the meeting and you can mute yourself, and then we'll ask you to come back in when it's time to hear from you. If that's okay, is that okay with you, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda.
Discussion and possible vote to change the membership configuration from 7 to 5 for the Bike Path Committee, which was created by, is appointed by the Wareham Board of Selectmen.
In this presentation, you'll see this improvement on the agendas. We list, the office lists who the presenter for the information is going to be. So you saw Mr. Buckland's name, and you'll see Mr. Slavin as presenting the request on this one. Go ahead, Mr. Slavin.
Typical of a lot of the committees we have 7 or 9 members, and a lot of them, one is 11. It just seems to be a common problem with all of us and all these committees, that once we go over 5, it's extremely difficult to get a quorum a lot of times because of everything that's been going on, especially over the last couple of years. So just simply asking that we go from 7 to 5 on this particular committee. I do have 5 people, it looks like, that have actually said they will come and do this. Ken and I have been basically running the bike path project for the last 2.5, almost 3 years now on our own. And it's time to put a town committee together to move forward as the bike paths and the other options are starting to come forward.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Slavin, Mr. Manise?
No, I understand what he's doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tropiano, any questions of Mr. Slavin?
All set?
Mr. Titlebaum, any questions? And myself, no questions. Mr. Slavin, do you have a motion?
Basically have a motion as listed on the agenda to change the Wareham Bike Path Committee 7 to 5.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? I will accept a roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes,
myself, yes, 500. Thank you.
Discussion of Serped at-large commissioner. Again, presented by Mr.
All set, Judy?
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
It's okay. This is a little, the way it's written, as the way Serped did, it's a little confusing. The at-large commissioners, what they're looking for is organizations that may be representing minorities or any part of the town who we think might want to be involved with Serped. We basically have one available, I think, in our district area, because they break it up between the 27 communities. So at this time, I'm not suggesting who, but we may want to reach out to things like Damien's Pantry or some other group that does, this type of work, and see if we have someone there that's interested in actually participating in Serped. We can put
What
the name
kind of
in.
work are you talking about, sir? Can you be more specific?
Well, Serped basically does development on, obviously the roads, et cetera, but they do a lot of planning and economic development. And someone like Damien's Pantry or a similar food bank may, basically express their concerns about transportation, for their projects. Also, how they function economically, how they get funding, et cetera.
Okay. And you're telling us we can nominate one?
We should nominate one. I can't guarantee they'll be appointed, but we can nominate one.
Okay. Do you, Mr. Titlebaum, any questions or comments?
No.
Mr. Torpiano, questions or comments?
Nope.
Mr. Manise, questions or comments?
yeah, I believe we should send this information out to the different groups of 501c3s and let them know that this opportunity exists, and let them come back, at least give them opportunity to get back to us. And it spells out fairly well in the body of it, what they're looking for, represent and speak for traditionally disenfranchised minority and or low-income populations and housing and economic development planning processes, as well as area transportation investments among other important areas. So, it would be good to send it out to the numerous groups we have in town, maybe get on the website and see what we get for responses. Just a suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Slavin, it looks like the appointments will take effect on May 25th. So what would be the timeline that we would have to make these nominations?
I would think we probably can put this out and give ourselves a 4-week time frame.
A
And then at
4-week
that,
timeframe? Okay.
and at that point there, we'll have some idea we get it in.
Okay, thank you. I think Mr. Maniz's suggestion is a good one. I will get it on the website and I will also draft a letter to send to the 501c3s that would probably benefit from being nominated to this, if that's okay with you, gentlemen.
Thank you
That's
very
great.
much.
Okay,
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And
Right. Next up is appointment of the 2023 Serpent Commission member.
well, that's easy.
Oh, my God.
That one there is, they put this out about a month earlier than we usually get it. Obviously, I've been the Serpent Commission member for a while now, and I chair the commission, so I would ask the board if they would be willing to reappoint me again.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Absolutely. Our foreign ambassador. Any further discussion on the motion?
Are you chairing it this next year coming up? So,
Yeah, it looks like it might be 2 years, actually.
all right.
Motion made and seconded. I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Maniz,
Yes,
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes, and bring home the bacon, please.
yeah, Mr. Slavin,
I abstain.
and myself, yes, so 401. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Do I need to send? Yeah, I need to send this out. Okay. Okay, our ABCC seasonal renewal certification. We just need to. Where's the full sheet? We need to sign this document, which you have a copy of.
Yep.
Which talks about the seasonal renewal certification, those who failed to renew and none of them failed, and seasonal licenses that we disapproved and we didn't do that either. So,
It's the same.
I'm sorry.
It's the same as it was.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I'll accept a motion to just authorize the signature, authorize us to sign it.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
made and seconded to authorize to sign this. Any further discussion? Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
yes.
and myself, yes, 500. Thank you very much.
Okay, ratify hiring of William Lima Jr. of full-time paramedic. So moved.
Second,
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion to ratify the hiring? Roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
yes.
myself, yes. Okay.
Discussion of full vote of town meetings, spring town meeting warrant article.
The only ones that we could vote on would be the two that we heard last week. They would be Article 15 and Article 16, which both were $3 million for the sewer extensions and the sewer lines. Do you choose to make a recommendation on favorable action for those or not?
You know, we didn't get any information because Mr. Sullivan wasn't here last week, and I have to have Mr. Sullivan weigh in on this.
Mr. Sullivan, do you choose to weigh in on the sewer replacement Articles 15 and 16 on the regular annual or no?
I guess it would be, I was not at the last meeting, so I'd have to know what questions there are.
I didn't have any questions.
Well, the question is, have you reviewed this? I mean, where where does this stand with you?
They would borrow these, so, total of $6 million. They have increased their EDUs, looks like voted for 15% increase. You would not have really outside of short-term interest through bans in the first year of this, so really wouldn't impact their next fiscal year budget. So you know, they have the room to borrow, but you know, we're borrowing an awful lot. There seems to be a need for this because that's Swiss Beach area. That's where a lot of the intrusion is, getting away from the gravity lines, which are so deep. It sounds like a good plan. Part of this, they'll obviously have to repave all the streets they go through. The other line that's going down the Narrows, I mean, the life expectancy is up. We have a sewer lines that were put in here, what, starting in the 70s? Yeah, it's now it's 2022. So that's a long time. So in some aspects, that's going to come home to roost. So that is going to be by far, more than anything, the most expensive impact to this community going forward is that sewer department.
Thank you.
So.
Does that answer, does anybody have any other questions of Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Slavin?
It's not a question. We had a capital planning meeting last week, and the $2-3 million projects are actually nothing at all compared to what we're looking at. I hate to be a negative outlook, but our sewer issues are going to be expensive into the tens of millions of dollars, and it's coming sooner than later.
Thank you.
So we're going to have to prepare for that.
Thank you. Mr. Titlebaum, questions or concerns? Mr.
Oh, I
Tropiano?
mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, Mr. Tropiano?
Look, I know that the Swiss Beach project should have been done probably a long time ago, so I was okay with it. I just wanted to hear what he had to say. And by the way, to point out to him that the 70s don't seem like that long ago to me.
Mr. Manise, do you have any questions or concerns, sir?
Just, just statements, I guess. I mean, the 15% increase is close to $100. I know Mr. Sullivan said shouldn't impact next year's budget, but I think it would be, it may impact, but the water pollution control budgets moving forward, and that in turn will impact the user fees. Might be nice to get a handle on user fees and EDUs and part them out so that those who have more use pay more. It's it has to be done. It has to be done. And as Mr. Slavin said, things to come, and will probably be greater with expansion related to capacity and it's a catch-22. We need to increase the capacity to handle areas that either need to be sewered or haven't been sewered or growth. But on the other hand, is a cost factor. And again, it was just a statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, would you like to recommend favorable action on item 15 and item 17 on the regular annual spring town meeting?
Second.
So with a second, any further discussion for favorable action on items, article number?
It's
15?
vote to recommend. We don't say
Yeah,
that
vote to
favorable
recommend,
action word.
yes. Yeah. Roll call vote, Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Tropiano,
Yes.
Manise,
Yes.
myself, yes, 500 for both of those. Thank you very much. We also heard from the school committee and the superintendent about transferring the East Wareham School to the town. You were not here, Mr. Sullivan. Would you like to weigh in on that? Because we could, in fact, vote on it if you so choose.
Yeah, it looks like after their reviews, the school moved their administration into the middle school. They do not feel that they have the need for the East School. And it looks like this would be the process of turning it over for whatever disposal happens. Obviously, there's some outstanding issues that would need to take over. So I'm sure that's, for the what do you call, no longer existing company that basically had the reverter, the clause in there, but that's what's going to have to happen. So I think this is the first step towards resolving that.
Thank you. Then I will accept a motion if you gentlemen choose to move a recommendation on that one.
So move to recommend.
Mr. Tropiano's motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Regrettably, yes, because I'm sure it's going to cost us a lot of money somehow.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yep.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Like I said last week, it's gonna cost us whether it was through the school department or the town, yes.
and myself, yes, 500. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, sir.
Okay, next is discussion and possible vote to include our articles on the special spring meeting.
Okay. You all got an up-to-date grid. And you will notice that the numbers on the grid are S and then a number. That's the suggestion of the town clerk so that we know that that's the special town meeting as opposed to the regular town meeting. I think it's a great idea. So we have adopted that for bookkeeping and clarity purposes. The budget transfers are a regular standard item. So I would ask that you move to include it.
So moved.
Is there any-
Second.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
Mr.
the only-
Sullivan,
As of right now, I know that we'll have to do one for the library with the new full-time director in there. So that's or the new director, excuse me. So we've been working on it, just the way everything came together. So we will need a transfer for the library. And as of this moment, that's the only one that I am certain of.
okay, thank you. I have a motion to include it in a second. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I just would like to know what that transfer would be. Is that like $90,000 or?
Yeah, Jim, I'm going to ballpark it right now. Excuse me, second, so ballpark it. I think it's about 14,000 altogether.
Because there's money in there already from the previous year that moves forward.
Yep.
Right, so we had the budget established with the new director and things. That's basically the shortfall, looking as I'm projecting it. So it's not to cover the whole amount, it's just the delta, if you will. So
Thank
good
you.
question, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further questions? I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yeah,
and myself, yes, 500. It is included. Fund the parking program.
Yes. So
Mr.
to include.
Sullivan, do you choose to make any comments, sir?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm reviewing what we have left over, and I think the just going through it, I'd like to keep the article on there. I
Yep.
think it may be more of some of the community projects than funding the program. Might have enough to cover a full year, so.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Tropiano with a second from Mr. Titlebaum to include. Any further discussion or comments? Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
yes.
myself, yes, 500. It is included. The spring 2022 capital program.
Yeah, that one we'll do as a presentation. I've got a few items that I'd like to bring forward for the board's consideration when we're doing capital. It's going to be a lot of excuse me, some of the roofs, if you will, and there's also, that's where I'd like to discuss some potential project funding for HVAC systems for things such as the library, and seeing the board's action of perhaps some of the ARPA funding. I just want to make sure I've got those. I think it should be a full discussion.
Thank you. So
Move.
I will accept a motion to include it in the warrant.
Move to include.
I have a motion to include. Is
Second.
there a second? My motion made and seconded to include. Any further discussion? Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
yes,
and myself, yes. Article S4 would be the transfer of available funds, and we got those figures from you earlier today, Mr. Sullivan. Do you care to address that?
I'm gonna see if I can pull that up real quick.
35,000 for snow and ice,
Yep,
200.
We got it right here. Yeah, that's snow and ice deficit. I believe it's around 35,000 right now. Knock on wood, we don't touch that again. So, well, we did have some substantial snowfall in a row. You know, it's not been as bad as it could be. We did fill up on salt, and we want to try and probably get some more at the beginning of the year before the current contract expires. It's a favorable rate right now, so we want to fill up the barn as much as possible. Deacon's School facility, we do not have in the proposed municipal maintenance budget funding for the Deacon's School. So no matter what happens, we still need to pay for the heat, utilities, etc. for that facility. So I'm proposing from free cash, set aside $200,000 for that. And then item C is benefits reserve. One of the things that holds us back is sometimes when you have long-term employees retire or leave, they have certain benefits buyback, such as vacation time. And, you know, let's say they had 30 days of vacation you're buying back. What we've done is always you sit on that position until you have that salary taken care of. I think it's more important, especially with our staffing, to fill these positions as soon as possible rather than let it lag. And this reserve allows us to use funding out of there for such items, so we can make sure that we refill positions quickly.
Thank you. And thank you for filling positions quickly. I will accept a motion to put it on the warrant, to include it on the warrant.
So moved.
Second.
second,
Motion made and seconded to include it in the warrant. I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Manise,
yes.
and myself, yes, 500. Next one, Mr. Sullivan. the
I
PEG
don't have,
access.
this is an annual one that we do. I don't have the exact number for that now, but that's our the biannual transfer to the Wareham Community TV
Yep.
from PEG
So I'll
access.
accept a motion to include it,
Include.
and motion, a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Motion made to include and a second. It is a standard article that we put in every year. Any further discussion? Mr. Slavin.
Yeah.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes,
myself, yes, it's included. The S6 is return unused funds from completed projects for the community preservation open space. You have the amount in the article that in the warrant that you've given. I would ask that we recommend that that be included.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to include that on the warrant. Any further discussion? I will go for a roll call. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
yes,
and myself, yes. Next one, S7, is funds to provide beach mobility access maps from community preservation funds, which would be $60,000. These are maps that allow limited mobility individuals to use the beaches. They are used in several communities on the Cape, and it's a great idea if you know about them. So I would ask that we include that on the warrant.
Move to include.
Second for discussion, because you got a language problem in here.
Okay, thank you. Motion made and a second for discussion. What's the question, sir?
It talks about supporting equipment for installation on quote, town-owned beaches, unquote. Onset Beach is not a town-owned beach. It's still owned by the original development corporation and whoever's inherited their shares, as we, find out from time to time when we go to Mr. Ward to get him to sign off on things. So I think the language there needs to be changed to say town-owned or managed beaches, because we're effectively the trustee for that beach. In modern legal terms, that would be our role.
Town-owned or managed?
Yeah, and I think that would cover us under the decree.
Mr. Bowen, you want to weigh in on that one? That's a good, okay, great. We will accept that. And I'm sure that that clarification doesn't change the intent of the proposal, which was forwarded to us by the Community Preservation Committee. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'm a little confused on that. I thought that was all resolved a number of years ago about ownership and not ownership and who had the authority and the right on this decree land. So I'm just a little confused on the change in language and having to get permission to do so.
Well, the issue is the town does not own that property in fee simple the way we do, for example, Swiss Beach or Little Harbor. The rights of the public to use Onset Beach were basically a court creation. And although they didn't have that exact language available to them at the time, what they basically did was create a dedicated public easement on the land, meaning anybody in the world could use it. And essentially the case was an injunction against the original developer saying, hey, you stop developing. You promised these people you wouldn't build in front of their houses. You wouldn't do this, you wouldn't do that. And now you've breached these covenants that you made to these people. So we, court, are going to step in and say no more of that, knock it off. And the public can use all these spaces that you originally agreed were going to be held open for people to use. So what they did was they mentioned briefly in there, they mentioned something about the streets and said they weren't affecting that, but maybe the town might take them over, which they did the subsequent year at town meeting. So that makes all the streets in Onset public ways because those too belong to the original developer at the time. But the beach itself, a lot of the squares down there and so on and so forth are still technically owned by the original development company. And all the decree case says is they don't have any more rights to that land than anybody else really. So it's kind of a unique parcel.
Yeah, and is that company still in effect, or has it been dissolved? Was it ever incorporated? And
every time somebody needs something from them, they wind up reviving the company.
Right.
So right now it's dissolved.
Yeah, it's dissolved. So you could say then in that case, as with any property, when the company is no longer active, then the ownership devolves to the people who own the company, if you will. Individually, the shares, the stocks and what have not. So what's happened over the years, and if you go back, you'll find 7 or 8 instances since the 40s even, where somebody needed to do something down there. It involved something or other that was, one of the properties belonging to the old Onset Bay Grove Association. So what they've done is they've gone to the War family, and in this case, David War is the current person, and they've basically paid for the company to be revived by the Secretary of the Commonwealth so that Mr. War can sign things as an officer of the company to have full legal effect. And then those things get recorded or dealt with. We wound up doing something like that with the bathhouse.
Correct.
And then eventually it's a limited revival of the company for like 60 days or whatever, just enough time to get him to sign something, and then it goes away again until the next person comes along. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it just seems a very complicated situation. When I look at the owners on utilizing the town websites, I think it says the town of Wareham.
Oh, yeah, if
So,
you look at, yeah,
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 that's all. I'm all set.
thank you.
okay.
I have a motion and a second, I believe, to include, do I have a motion and a second?
Yeah, I second it for discussion.
Okay, yes, okay. Motion made and seconded. I'll go for a roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes,
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
myself, yes, 500. It is on. The Tremont Nail S8 Tremont Nail Remediation Project. This again is at the Community Preservation Committee request. Sum of $35,000 for short-term debt principal payment on the bond, which was approved in 2018. I would
Move.
accept a motion.
I just
Second.
gave,
Motion
Second.
made and seconded to include. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
yes,
Mr. Titlebaum,
yes,
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
myself, yes, 500. It is on. S9 Harbor Services Permit Receipts Reserved for Appropriations Account.
move to include.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Roll call vote. Mr. Slavin.
One
Oh,
quick question
yep.
here.
Yep.
Hopefully, Mr. Sullivan can answer this. Are these for both these articles? I guess it would be 8 and the net, well, whichever they are. That would be for slips to moor our boats at.
Yeah, so sorry, Jim, I don't, usually you get the full article from them. Did you guys not get that? And I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
Well,
don't
no,
have it.
one of them says transfer of $4,000 from Harbor Services permits receipts reserved for appropriation account to be transferred to the Harbor Masters Maintenance and Improvements accounts. Take any action there too. And then, and it says patrol boat dockage for 2022. And then the other one's very similar. It's just a little more money. And it's a patrol boat dockage for the Wareham River.
Yeah, they have the two different locations, I believe, so.
Yeah, they do.
Which would be, just for my own, which is Wareham River and where's the other one?
Um,
I thought we kept the other one over there at,
We do at the pier.
Yeah, at the pier, so I'll have to go through it, Jim, and I'm sorry, I just didn't have that in front of me.
no, that's all right. Just, I was looking at them and scratching my head. I didn't know if it was, I just like to know what's going on. That's
Sure.
all.
No, I understand.
All right, gentlemen, I have a motion to include with a second. I will go for a roll call vote. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Tropiano,
Yes,
Titlebaum,
yes,
Manise.
Yes,
Thank you. Myself, yes, 500. And Article 10 would be the slightly larger amount of money with an explanation already given. I'll accept the motion.
so moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Slavin,
Yes.
Tropiano.
Yep.
Titlebaum,
yes,
Manise,
yes.
myself, yes. S11, Mr. Titlebaum.
yeah, I submitted this,
Can
the
I just
article.
say something before you start?
Yeah,
We have an executive session. We have a very lengthy agenda still. So I'm just keeping an eye on the time and reminding you that we have about an hour and 15 minutes left. So I'm just making that comment. Go ahead, Mr. Titlebaum.
yeah, I'll try to be brief. This would be to rescind the article that was passed at the spring annual town meeting last year. It was a petition article. It sought to create LIP units, affordable units. This bylaws turned into a disaster procedurally. The Attorney General approved it, so basically somebody can go to the building commissioner and go ahead and build this. But Department of Housing and Community Development says, yeah, but we're not going to count the units because it isn't phrased correctly in several ways. I understand that the town planner and town council had spoken with the petitioner, and that the latest iteration from the petitioner that wound up on the regular warrant still is screwed up. And, there's nothing here that can't be done by going in and getting a variance anyway. So I think rather than try to fool around with this thing, let's just get it off the books so nobody takes advantage of it in the interim. and can get a house built to someplace where they never could have gotten built before, and have it not even count as affordable on the town rolls. So that's why I offered this to the board. So that was my thinking. If anybody has any questions.
We lose Judy? Oh, no, she's there.
I don't know. Judy, you there?
Did we lose Judy? Hello? Judy. All right, let's,
She's muted.
you're not here, so let's keep going then. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, here she is.
Um,
Oh, there she was.
She's there, but she's not saying anything. We'll just keep going. Does anybody have any questions for Peter?
Well, yeah,
Go ahead.
I have some, well, if you don't mind if I speak to this.
Go ahead.
I don't mind the idea of what you are trying to do. But I do not approve of the last paragraph, which I find is defamatory. And also at the same time, I don't think any of us should be speaking about any of the candidates during our selectmen's meetings, one way or another.
Well, I don't know that I have in this instance.
Just wait a second. I have not done that. I will not do that, and others on the board don't. So I cannot support this because of that last paragraph. Thank you.
The last paragraph.
Judy, are you there?
No, okay, so anyway, all right, does anybody else have any questions? No? All right, so, can I have a motion then?
Alan?
My only comment is that what Jim talked about really goes, at a person who was involved, obviously writing the article. And I don't think we should be doing that as part of an article.
Well, if that's the board's pleasure, then
You
I can certainly change the explanation to just reflect the procedural difficulties with it.
I would prefer that because it sends the wrong message to the town. I know where you're coming from, but I think it's not the place to do it.
Peter, what do you want to do?
Yeah, I would move the article, and I'll come up with an explanation that jives with what I said tonight for the FinCom booklet, just that it's been flawed and it's not going to be able to be fixed, and it needs to come off the books before somebody starts, slinging houses up that don't give us any benefit.
Do I have a second? Hello?
Alan did.
Alan, second? Okay, he's muted.
Sorry, I was muted second.
Okay, motion made, seconded, roll call. Jim?
No.
Peter?
Yes.
Alan?
Yes.
Patrick, yes.
Judy says, "Have Bob let me back in."
Okay, she's working on it. So, in the meantime, so that will be included.
Well, yeah, but if she's coming back in, just let her weigh in on the vote too.
Mr. Clerk, Town Council here, since it's uncertain to what degree Madam Chairman was able to participate in that part of the meeting, it perhaps procedurally might be best just to record the vote in accordance with those who you knew were participating.
Okay, so I'll record the vote. It's 3-1-0. And that's because she's still not in yet, so we're gonna keep going. What's the next? Is there something else to add to the thing? I don't have the exact thing in front of me. Peters, what's left?
We have the Wareham Historic District Commission. They want to drop from 7 to 5, but that's a bylaw change, so it's got to go to town meeting.
All right, so somebody want to move that, please?
Move to include.
Second.
Move to include second. Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Peter,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes,
Alan,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Okay, so that's 4-0-0. All right, what else, Peter?
Ditto with regard to S13, calls for modifying the quorum of the Wareham Historic Commission.
Right, okay, so that's your motion. Do I hear a
Yep.
second?
Second.
All right, motion made and second. Any other discussion? Roll call. Alan,
Yes.
Jim,
yes.
Peter,
Yes.
myself, yes, 4-0-0. What else?
Let's see. Length of lease term for developer of Tremont Nail Factory. This is the one that I thought Ken might want to stick around and talk about.
Okay, Ken, are you there? Can you unmute, please?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you want to weigh in on this, please?
Yeah, we had an RFP out for a developer, a master developer of the Tremont Nail Factory. What we discovered was that they needed a long-term lease of 30 years plus 2 30-year options for continuance. And so we had to redo the RFP and reissue it with that option available to the developer that would be applying for the master developer. And what we found is that we did get a proposal in. So it does require us to modify the terms of the lease so that we can have the developer proceed with making the vision happen at the Tremont Nail Factory.
Okay, Jim, did you want to weigh in? Do you have your hand up?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was actually trying to dig up the second email that was sent with the additional information or articles we're discussing.
So
Go
you're
ahead,
good.
I'm sorry.
Good thing we're not in an auction then, because you just bought it.
Oh, thank you.
Oh. Okay, so do I have a motion, please?
Move to put on the warrant.
Okay, Alan, you second? Okay, any other discussion? Roll call. Alan, you gotta unmute. Alan,
Quick question for Ken first.
Yeah.
That's standard procedure, the 30 plus 2 30s.
Yeah, that's standard for a commercial lease, quite common.
Okay, thank you. Answer is yes.
okay, Jim,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes, I've got Judy on my phone. You still have to run the meeting, Patrick, because she's not there.
all right, so myself, yes, that's 4-0.
Yeah, she can't get back in, but she can hear what's going on, so she's a yes as well.
Okay, so 5-0-0. Okay,
Well,
good.
Mr. Acting Chairman, I don't believe you can count Ms. Whiteside's vote.
We've got her on the phone. But you can hear.
Yeah, that won't do.
Okay, 4-0.
Okay, you're getting aced out, Judy, sorry.
Not that I disbelieve Peter's conveying of her vote, but
Well, see, this is why you wait until the end of March to renew town council, so
Well,
you
that's
keep
true.
them from
She has-
doing these things to you.
All right, Peter, what's the next, please? Peter,
I'm sorry, let's see, next one, zoning bylaw amendments, Article 5, Section 590, solar energy generation facilities, Article 3, Section 320 use table, and Article 16 definitions. This was the product of the solar bylaw committee.
okay, so do you make a recommendation?
Yeah, move to recommend,
Okay, second,
or not recommend, no, this is move to put on the warrant, I'm sorry.
yeah, okay, second,
Second, and for discussion quickly,
okay, go ahead.
just to town council, I believe I talked to the solar group and stuff, and I just want to confirm town council did review and everything was okay this time around.
with your permission, Mr. Acting Chairman, I did look at it. It appears that the proposal addresses the things that the Attorney General pointed out in the last version. So I think it has a much better chance at approval. You know, I'll just put the hedge out there that anything having to do with solar is going to be in flux. So I can't give you a guarantee that ultimately the Attorney General would approve it, but I think within the knowledge that's available out there and as this part of the law is developing, I think this is probably as good a bylaw as you would probably see.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. I just wanted to make sure that people put a lot of effort into this and before it goes in, to let them know that we're trying to make it work for them.
No, and they were very good. They reached out to me last week and I was able to have some very pleasant correspondence.
Good. My answer is yes.
thank you. Any other questions?
At planning board, they came in front of the planning board last night and they voted to support it
Okay,
for town meeting body.
all right, so roll call. Alan,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Peter,
I'll say yes to putting it on the warrant. I still think we're gonna run into trouble with the 5 megawatt limitation. But that's, you know, for the AG to decide. This is a very tough industry to regulate. I don't think a lot of people realize that they've had a carve out almost in the same fashion as 40B as it relates to solar since 1985. That makes it really hard to deny solar applications. And that was done intentionally. Let's face it, these laws get written, you know, theoretically by the legislature, but there's industry lobbyists telling them what they need. And, you know, it's going to be very hard. We've seen this with some of the court cases. You know, uniformly, these appeals, after the solar places are granted a permit, the appeals get denied. It's just very difficult for us to do anything at the local level. And I almost think that people might have better luck getting a real handle on this thing if they focus their efforts on Beacon Hill and tried to peel back some of what that law has been doing since 1985. I think that's really, you know, where the pot of gold is on this issue. If you don't want these places going up, you know, huge ones and all over the place. But I'll vote to support it going before the voters.
okay, myself, yes, that's 4-0-0. What's next, Peter?
The only thing, Derek had some revolving fund.
Yep.
Was it?
Derek? You're muted.
Oh, I got back.
Hey, all right.
Hey,
All
That
right,
only
we'll
took 4 tries, guys. Sorry about that.
you paid your phone bill.
All right, the revolving funds, excuse me, pull those up. You'll see that's S16 add revolving accounts. And this would be one for the Little Harbor Golf Course. We're doing the revolving right now. As you know, we've put out the RFP and we're soliciting bids for the management and maintenance of the golf course. And then once that gets squared away, I think we move that over to an enterprise fund, but I don't have the capacity to develop a proper budget or anything for that right now until we start seeing the what we get back for the bids and such items. So my recommendation is to right now any revenues be put into the revolving fund. There is a $1 million limit on that. That's very generous, but you know, I think just looking at it, that's potentially if it gets set up where we get the revenues, then have to pay back the contractor, you might want to have something along that line. Number 2 is the Deacon's facility. We have a group that's looking to have the town rent that out. So if we rent that out, if everything were to pass and that facility were to be rented out, those revenues would right now go to the general fund. There's no catch mechanism for it. So this would create that catch mechanism, because otherwise all you'd be doing is then having to go back to town meeting, transfer money over, and just even with the 200,000 set aside. It would be messy. So my recommendation is just to set that up. And in both of these, it'd be myself or the municipal maintenance director, because really it's just the cost for the building. So.
Thank you. Any further questions of the young man?
Move to include.
Second,
Motion made and seconded to include. Roll call vote, please. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
yes,
Mr. Tropiano. Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
and myself, yes, 500. Gentlemen, can you just recap for me what the S11 vote was, please?
310,
And the next one, 12?
400,
Thank you. And
Yep.
13
400,
and 14
400.
and 15?
You were back for that one, weren't you?
No,
That was 400.
thank you. I'm sorry, gentlemen. I have absolutely no idea what went on there.
Oh, well.
So next up,
Okay, so
you ready?
now we're going to have a motion to close the warrant.
Right, so moved. I move that we
Second.
close 2022 spring special town meeting.
Yep,
Motion made and
Second.
seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor of closing the warrant, say aye. Oh, no, I have to do roll call. But God, I'm really confused now. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano, Mr. Titlebaum, and
Yes.
myself, yes, the warrant is closed.
Any other town that's not reasonably anticipated last 48 hours?
We have
Anybody?
none.
All right, next up, town administrators report.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. So with the leaving of Mr. Requena from the Inspectional Service Department, I just wanted to give you an update on how things are being handled. Unfortunately, at the same time, we also had the local go out, on a temporary basis, but that's, he will be back. So in the meanwhile, we have 3 avenues happening. One, Mr. Aquina is still assisting with some items, but additionally, we have hired retired building commissioner, Mr. Rod Palmer. He was the building commissioner at Falmouth. And we also, Mr. David Morris, come back. I guess he's a glutton for punishment. So he's
Yes,
back
he is.
temporarily. He didn't want to make sure that wasn't just him in the office. So we appreciate all their help. It's great to have, especially local people step up and help the town. We've posted for the position, and really tough position to fill. It's given today's day and age, what's happening with the amount of money you can make in the building industry. There's not too many people that are going, back to the municipal side, but I think it's a great community to work for and work within. So I have high hopes that we can get somebody. Do you have any questions?
I would suggest we send Mr. Moore's wife some flowers and a box of chocolates or something.
I don't know. It might be getting him out of the house.
No, we both know how this is going to work.
So I appreciate that. Dave's a great guy. So really appreciate all his help. So the next item is, I just wanted to give you an update on the Tremont Nail Building. Per the request of the Community Preservation Committee, we did get the signs removed and the bell. The total cost was approximately $4,700. So while we were able to get that bid in, that was much lower than 3 other companies that we had researched. It was, I will tell you, it was a little nerve-wracking seeing Mr. Menard and his crew on the roof there. So I was on the ground. I certainly would not be up there. Heights are not one of my favorite things, but they did an excellent job removing the signs. And we currently have the bell, which is absolutely stunning in the old cafeteria section of the town hall. And I'd like to request some ideas. that's not going to go back up into the building. And just so folks know, none of this was done to prepare the building to be raised or anything like that. The signs were, starting to blow down, so community preservation had requested that we take them down. They're hoping to have them restored. The cupola was in such bad repair, and that's what housed the bell, that they brought that down. We've got it still, once they put it on the ground, even as gently as possible, it basically fell onto itself. But they have the whole thing, they have all the parts, so you can obviously recreate it to be put back up. But I would not recommend putting the bell up. So I think it's a bell from the was it the 1850s, I thought, on there. So it's a really important part of our community's history. So I'd like to see recommendations of where they think where you think it should go from anybody that's got a really good idea. The housing on it's really is pretty stunning, and it is loud as heck, let me tell you that. So if you go to see it, please don't ring the bell. It echoes throughout the whole town hall right now.
If I may, we have one in front of the East Elementary School too, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
So it'd be nice to try to come up with some sort of, at least in my thoughts, it doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people. Makes me pretty happy. But, come up with some place to keep them if we're going to dispose of the elementary school at some point in time. And would be, be a nice little historical thing, a little narrative on them. Thank you.
Thank you. The other item we have that's really, and Howie Smith has been all over, is the cannon that we still have housed in the water at the town hall. And I think it's time that we take the next step on that and see about getting it together. It's obviously, it turned out to not be one of the Nimrod cannons, but it's really it's still a great piece of history. So that's something too. So yeah, the signs are in a safe place, and hopefully community preservation can allocate some funding to rehabilitate those.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, that's where the plaque would say purportedly from the HMS Nimrod.
Mm. Well, it isn't, so we know it isn't.
But you can still purport.
Right. Mr. Sullivan, you all set with your report, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I had one thing for him. There was, I guess, quite a flutter last week when an elevator got stuck in the multi-service center. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so one of the things is I emailed the COA director, because it's all the reports I was hearing was nobody there, all the just real chaos. And I said, oh my gosh. So I asked, why didn't necessarily you, but everyone in general, reach out to municipal maintenance right away? And the director responded, oh no, Chris was there when it happened. So that was just, I think we can make points without being alarmist, and I don't want to go any further down that road. I just think it's, there's, I understand the point, but there's plenty of elevators in so many buildings, and it's been in there at least since the conversion back in the 90s, having an elevator. So, but people can say what they want. So.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, I just wanted to follow up on that. I mean, reading Facebook, you would have thought it was the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire. I mean, it was, disaster averted. And I was like, well, elevators get stuck all the time. We have firefighters and ladder trucks and all kinds of good stuff to deal with those issues. So I just wanted, to ask you about it, just to maybe calm some nerves over it.
And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
there's a phone in the elevator too.
Yeah, there's a button in all of the elevators. You all set, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Liaison and initiative.
Hold on one
reports.
second. Procedurally, I have one question. Did we actually take a vote on the community preservation proposal for 801 Main Street. I know it didn't look like it had the support of the board, but I
No, we
didn't think
did
we
not.
took a vote.
No, we did not.
And, okay,
We were going to hear from the proponent. No, we did not.
well, we heard from the,
We heard from them, but
the
no, we
property
didn't.
manager and.
Yeah, we heard from them, but we didn't have it on the agenda to vote, but so, and no, we did not. It's not been voted on. I don't think. Let me look at my record.
It is on the warrant, correct?
It's on the warrant, yes. I just got to look at my grid.
We didn't vote on it.
I don't
We
think
held-
we did either.
We
Okay,
held it-
gentlemen, we have 45 minutes left. I'm not trying to rush you, but liaison and initiative reports. Mr. Slavin.
I won't give you any details, just very quickly. Community Events Committee has received a reasonable number of requests for the coming year, so it looks like Onset and other parts of town will be active with different events during the season. There was an anti-Semitism seminar today. We had 170 participants, mayors, town administrators, town managers, town council, selectmen, etc. It was a very interesting discussion about the rise in anti-Semitism, among other things. Capital planning, we've already discussed what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years with water pollution control facility and the expenses. Serpent meeting that I had that we chaired, again, discussion on the ARPA funds usage, and also the MBTA housing zoning requirements was another hot topic as well. And I have a Plymouth County Advisory Board meeting, I think it's Thursday, and it'll be the county's budget discussion. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Manise?
Well, let's see, we have our monthly meeting for the refuse district coming up next week. If we could, I see Mr. Sullivan come back. Have you had any opportunity to make time to talk with the recycling committee? I think it would be nice if you could come and meet with them at their next meeting, just to get it off the plate.
Yeah.
I would appreciate that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tropiano.
I'm all set.
Mr. Titlebaum?
All set.
I just have a couple of things I want to say. The volunteer handbook or the committee handbook is totally online. In that handbook, there are links to the open meeting law and the ethics law. And following those links, anybody who has been appointed to any board or committee in this town can take the courses online. You print the certificate at the end of the line, at the end of the program, and you give the certificate to the town clerk. All volunteers for this town are required to do that within 30 days of being appointed. There's been some confusion about where those links are. The volunteer handbook or the committee handbook is online. It has been updated regularly. The links are there. There are sample agendas. There are sample minutes. There are sample letters of resignation. There's all sorts of things in that. And it's very clear to me that at least one committee chairwoman has read the entire thing because she made comments about it. But I don't think that people are really using it to their benefit. There are a lot of things that you can learn just by looking in the index and following along, how to post your minutes, that kind of thing. And that's all. Okay. No consent agenda, right? Patrick? No bills. Okay.
No, sir. No.
Okay, so we have an executive session scheduled. So I will accept a motion, and we will not be coming back after that. So I will accept a motion to go into executive session and we will take a 5-minute recess while Mr. White clears the audience. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Don't we have to put the reason why we're going into exec?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It is reason number 3, reason number. What was it?
Collective bargainer.
It's, yeah, it's reason,
Bargaining with non-union employees.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, all those, roll call vote to go into executive session. Mr. Slavin,
Yes.
Mr. Manise,
Yes.
Mr. Tropiano,
Yes.
Mr. Titlebaum,
Yes.
and myself, yes, it is 9:19. We will be back at 9:24.